Good morning, church. We're back again. We're coming into your lounge room to talk about this morning, stop pretending and get real with yourself, and how to love God above all else. I've got some special guests with me this morning. We've got Mariella Purton. You're married, just got a little boy. What's his name?
Boston.
Yeah, and how are you finding being a mum?
Oh yeah, it's lots of fun.
Yeah, and you still manage to do some serving around church.
Yeah.
You work with the youth, and do you work a little bit in the supermarket still? Or?
Not really, but I go in and help sometimes because I miss it a bit.
Yeah, so it's a juggle, isn't it, when you give up full-time work to be a mum full-time. So, yeah, but we love having you around here.
Thank you.
And we have James Todd, who is the Regional Coordinator for Scripture Union.
That's
and
right.
Done lots of roles around here. You're an ex-chaplain, I couldn't say that.
Yep.
You were a favourite up at the Penguin District School, and you're also a dad. And so we're glad to have you this morning. You're still a dad. Oh, yeah, of course, yeah. So really privileged to have you. Some wisdom at the table. Been around a while, so that's going to be exciting. And no pressure at all. Yep. No pressure at all, hey? So what I thought this morning, we're going to kick off reading Acts chapter 2, pretty famous passage, but it's after Jesus went ascended, and which means he actually just went back to heaven, and the disciples were hanging around, and this was kind of their mantra, or their what they sort of did, and sort of sums up a bit of their life. So we're going to kick off at Acts chapter 2. Verse 42, and I'll start us off and then we'll all join in. So it says, they devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching and to the fellowship, to the breaking of bread and to prayer. Everyone was filled with awe, and many wonders and miraculous signs were done by the apostles.
And all the believers met together in one place and shared everything they had. They sold their property and possessions and shared the money with those in need.
They worshipped together at the temple each day, met in homes for the Lord's Supper, and shared their meals with great joy and generosity, all the while praising God and enjoying the goodwill of all the people. And each day the Lord added to their fellowship those who were being saved.
An interesting passage. So anything stand out to you just from that passage, just to start off with?
Oh, it just sounds like an exciting and fun time to be around.
Yeah, it is.
And I also like how the sense of community that comes out in this, how they were caring for one another's needs and wanted to be around one another.
I like that they met together and that they did it daily.
Yeah. So and there was lots of things that they did in the passage, and they prayed, ate, worshipped, read the scriptures together. So were generous, gave away stuff. So pretty amazing how we see with this community there's a bit of structure happening, but there is also a great deal of diversity. So we're going to just sort of explore that a bit together today. So when you look at having a structure in your life, we can glean from what these guys did. But I was just wondering, James, how do you have a bit of structure in your life about how to plan and spend time with God that facilitates that?
Well, I have a variety of things that some are more structured than others. And the first thing I probably think of is I really love to start my day looking at the Word, opening the Word up and doing devotions. And I have different seasons of that, different things. Sometimes I use the SOAP principle that we've used here at church and journal. At the moment, I'm in a season where I'm using some of our Scripture Union resources called Encounter with God, and that goes a bit deeper into considering some of the passages that we might be familiar with, but how to go a bit deeper. And to me, to do that is the same as, or to not do it would be like skipping breakfast sort of thing. It sort of has become really close to me.
What about you, Mariella? We were thinking about these guys had some practices. What are some of the things that you enjoy doing to help you connect with God?
Yeah, well, I like to start my morning off straight away in prayer, because I feel like for me that just makes my day so much better, and it just, starts at makes me feel happy.
Yeah.
And I think as well, I like to always try and read my Bible and journal on that. And similar to what you were saying, like sometimes that can look very different, or sometimes it can mean even just like reading a book or something that's about God. And yeah.
So when you say start off your day in prayer, is that like, you know, in your bed straight away? You know, when you open your eyes in the morning, do you sort of start talking to God, or do you read a prayer, or how does that look?
Usually I sort of have a bit of a list of things that I pray for every day.
Yeah.
And I sort of start off by praying for those things.
Yeah.
Yeah, as soon as I wake up.
Yeah.
Open my eyes.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
So that does have a bit of a structure to it then.
Yeah. That's right.
So you feel like God answers some of those prayers, do you? Or is that
sometimes.
Yeah.
I think it's just when you start off your day in prayer, then I think you're just more aware of him during the day, and you're like, thanks God.
Yeah. So it sort of starts a conversation for the rest of the day.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Oh, that sounds good. So just thinking about structure, you know, like that's something that works for both of you. Is there something you've tried that actually didn't work and it was a disaster, or maybe just didn't give you the fruit that you thought about?
I mean, I like to pray daily, but for me, trying to structure it too much is difficult and doesn't feel as natural. Whereas when I can combine it with things like going for a walk, or perhaps if I'm awake in the middle of the evening or something like that, I can by using those as almost a reminder to be in tune with God, to pray. Then I've found that helpful. But giving myself specific tasks and times to do that hasn't been as effective for me. I know it might work for others, but
yeah. So just being a little bit more ad lib and having the freedom to do that.
Yep.
Yeah, that's cool.
What about you, Marielle? Has there been some things that haven't worked?
I think for me it's more like the time. Like it's for me, if I try and do things later at night, I just feel like my brain doesn't really work that well. If I try and read the Bible, then I just feel like I don't really get anything out of it.
Yeah.
And I prefer as well when I do things earlier, then I can think about it during the day, whereas if I go to sleep, then I'm sleeping, not thinking about it. So that's sort of how I like to do it.
Yeah. So just being able to let it introduce you to the different parts of your day instead of instead of like the bookend, you know, when you come to the end of the book, it's done and dusted then, the end of our day. So, you know, in this passage we see that they devoted themselves and they were doing stuff daily. So is there some other things that you do daily that are helpful, or do you find that it keeps shifting and changing?
Yes, somewhat. I was been contemplating some of that too, and some other areas of my life, I think, like walking or getting outside or even listening to music and different. There are different ways in which I like to relate that back to God and contemplate that in probably a deeper way, and they can become rhythms as well. And I think there's a lot that can be connected. I don't really know where I'm going with this.
I know for me, I have some weird things around praying. Like I had a son, Josiah got married this year and kind of was really missing him. And there's this it sounds really weird, but there's this tree as you come into Penguin, and it kind of at night it looks like a dinosaur. And I used to have that with him. We used to talk about it as he was growing up, and so I've made this, you know, the dinosaur tree, actually the trigger. Now, so when I drive coming from Burnie, it's a trigger for me to remind me to pray. So, and to pray for him, and it's kind of a bit what you talked about, how prayer helps us, because I was really missing him, and I found like that was just a little thing to kind of feel that mum's heart that was feeling a bit sad about him not being home. But I also know, this is another thing that I've done is friends of ours got married on the weekend, and I was lucky to bring home some of the flowers. So they're sitting on my table. And again, that's like been like a trigger for me during the day to pray for, you know, her starting off her getting married, and for the mother of the bride, you know, like missing her as well. So that's cool. But
that's a really cool idea. I like that.
So I guess it's not going to be a long-term thing, but in this season it's sort of like a trigger.
Yeah.
So do you have some things like that are like become daily things for a while and then you move on and do something else?
Oh, I was thinking about this, and like for me, like when I was working, I sort of had a time where I would always read my Bible and stuff during my lunch break.
Yeah.
And so now that I'm not working, I had to find a whole new routine with being at home lots and stuff. So like for me now, I find choosing to like read my Bible and stuff when Boston is having his nap.
Yeah.
So that's sort of been working for me. But as well, I also enjoy going on walks, and I used to always listen to music, but now I'm sort of going through a season where I just like to walk in silence and just, I guess, practice gratitude and just like chat to God about things and try and listen. I'm working on that.
Try and listen, yeah. Sometimes it's easy to do the talking.
Yeah, that's right. I'm very good at that.
Yeah.
I spent some years walking quite early, like I'd make sure, early for me, before 6 o'clock, and which I quite enjoyed, being out even when it was dark, and using that time to be a bit fitter, but also to pray and to contemplate things. And I did that for a number of years, and then I found I wasn't, it became quite dry and I wasn't enjoying it. And so I stopped, and I've changed that to something that's a bit shorter and a bit later in the morning. But I still do, and I do other things on other days, but I've adapted it a bit rather than throw it away. And I really valued those years I did that. But for now, it seems to be time for a different type of season.
Yeah. It's nice to sort of change things up a bit. Yeah.
And it's probably a good thing to ask, is this working for me? Because it's good to have a habit and good to keep doing it. But then every now and again to pause and go, is this working for me, or do I need to change my habit and adjust it? Yeah. So you've got some older kids. How did you tackle, I don't know if your kids have their own rhythms, but like how did you try as a parent try and impart some of that to your children or role model that to them?
I think consistency in your own life. Certainly we all get watched by our little ones, and when they're of an age, and as they get older and mature, and trying to just make that normal too. So I'd be pretty sure that for my kids, seeing me at the breakfast table in the same spot with my Bible and maybe some other material would be a pretty normal memory for them. And some of that, at some stages as well, I've had seasons where that's been on an audio play where we've been listening to that together. Or sometimes I might even read a passage out and just have a talk to them, or just let them, it might be a passage that I love the sound of. And so sometimes it's nice just to speak it out. And
So it's been an inclusive journey for them.
Yes, that and other things too, like you talk about rhythms, like when we have a Zoom, as we've done as a family in this current time, we always make sure we pray, and we'll rotate, who's praying at the end of that.
Nice.
So, and that just becomes a normal part of how we finish off, sort of talking to each other on a Zoom meeting because we're family.
Yeah, that's really special.
Yeah, I really like how you said it becomes normal. That's probably key in this, isn't it? Yeah. And then when it becomes normal, is it becoming that other question? Is it being still helpful? So normal is good, but then is it still being helpful? So that's a good combination of both those. What about you? How old's Boston now?
Nearly 4 months.
Nearly 4 months. So you're just starting the parenting thing. So do you have some ideals? Like how are you going to role model or think about faith for him? And without being a nagging parent, like with this agenda.
Yeah, that's right. I don't want to annoy him too much. Hopefully I wouldn't do that. Yeah. Well, for me growing up, every day when we would come downstairs, Mum would always be sitting on the couch and she would be reading her Bible. Yeah. And she wasn't just like reading it looking bored or anything, but like she would be getting excited and every time would want to like share what she'd read. And I think through that, like I learned that reading the Bible, that like how God actually speaks to us, and you could just see how much Mum loves God. Yeah. And I think for me, I hope that Boston will see that with me, that he'll see that I get excited to read the Bible and that I just love to spend time with him. Yeah. So I just hope that will rub off onto him. I don't know.
So it really is that role modelling thing, isn't it?
That's
Showing
right.
them. Yeah. So it's interesting that your mum's been that for you.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
I've been thinking about that because we've got 2 grandchildren now. One's, I shouldn't know, about 6 months, a bit older, and one's 2. And I always used to read my Bible in the lounge room in the morning because our boys were starting work early, and so I'd make sure I was out there at 5:30, 6 o'clock, and
nice
they'd watch.
and early.
They'd watch. That'd be part of that, just so I could say hello to them and model that to them. But now having a grandchildren, how do I role model it again? And it's like at a different age level. And so I read my Bible in bed in the morning and pray, and I do some journaling and stuff. And so we've started when he has his sleepovers to actually get his Bible out and just read a passage. And it takes a bit of effort because he wants to turn all the pages and screw it up and, but I'm just thinking I'm just going to practice with you that this process of reading the Bible, even though you mightn't understand it. But I think they get a little rhythm out of that as well. Yeah.
Good.
So for me, it's always been a challenge with my children about thinking about how do I do that role model thing and how do I actually talk sometimes practically to them, but how do you help somebody get an appetite to want to do it for themselves? Because it's all right to say, hey, it's nice for you, Dad, or Mum doing that, but so where does that crossover come, or do you think you can do that, or is that just something that's by God's grace?
Yeah, well, I think it's like any habit, or it's a bit like a muscle. You've got to train, and you've got to you don't just instantly have this great desire and passions for some, but for most of us, the more you learn, and like you're talking about your mum sitting there and being interested in something. If we're not interested, a little bit like my, I've got quite an attachment to Formula One racing, which I'd got out of.
Yeah.
But when I started watching it again, then I started, reading some books and probably, looking at some documentaries and finding out more. And all of a sudden, I got re-enthused about it. Yeah. And if my church life is a bit like that, if I just watch the occasional service or attend the occasional service, but if I'm not reading and if I'm not interested in some of the characters of historic importance or some other areas, the faith has to mean something and be exercised, I think, in some of those ways to keep me interested and enthusiastic about it.
I find that really interesting. Yeah, it's almost like you need someone to help you introduce to some of the characters. So I know the Bible app, the YouVersion Bible app, has a devotion where it's a cartoon, and it shows you, introduces you to the book, and kind of that's that kind of idea. And John's often watching it, it's like kind of blaring next to me, and I'm just like, oh, that's great, John. So he that's what he does. But for me, I like the Passion Translation, that it has about a couple of pages and tells you all about who wrote the book, why they wrote it, what era they wrote it in, and so I like how you related that to the Formula One about actually knowing something. Or for me, this is back in the day when I used to watch cricket a long, long time ago, when somebody was saying, oh, that's that player and they do that and they have a batting average of that and this is some info, it actually made it enjoyable to watch it. Yep. So that's kind of the correlation I'm hearing from you. So that's good.
Yeah, and these are real characters and the stories are so rich. At the moment I'm reading, we're looking slowly about Joseph and his brothers, and something that we feel as Christians so familiar with, but there's still so much in all of that and the interactions with the families and how that might look, in some of our own lives, some of those different sibling relationships, etc. Yeah. So it's you can always learn more, and the more you perhaps understand what the Father was thinking in that time, So I actually get excited of the morning, sort of opening up again to sort of, what's the next
part of it.
Yeah, what can I learn today from that story?
Yeah. So what I'm hearing you saying is it is good to involve other people in your discovery.
Yeah.
But also you can't nail it all on one morning.
No, that's right. Yeah.
It's a process.
Yeah, that's right.
What about for you? What sort of ignited some hunger for you, or how do you think you can help people be hungry about this sort of thing too?
I think like living as an example. I mean, because I can hardly tell Boston, read your Bible if I'm not doing it myself.
Yeah.
So I guess, like living it out myself, but as well, like what you were saying before about not getting dry, but to make sure that I'm finding new things. Like if I'm getting bored of something, then find something else that's going to make me more passionate and learn more about Jesus. But
So it's really about being aware of that temperature within yourself and whether your passion's sort of waning and then to change it up, I guess.
Yeah, that's right. And I liked what you were saying before about asking yourself that question, is this working for me? Yeah.
Well,
so I think that's helpful.
That's a good question for us to end today. What's working for you? Have you got some structures and patterns in your life that help you connect with God? If you haven't, would you like to give it a go? Is there something that you could try just for a while and see and meet with God and get to know him? It could be prayer, it could be reading the Bible, it could be going to church or watching something online, or there's many different things that we can try. What I liked in this passage was it said they devoted themselves. They actually took responsibility for their own hunger and their own devotion. And so it's not something someone else can force on you, but really it's a response where you're like, I'm going to try this, or I'm going to check this out. So have a great day and have fun exploring and trying and doing some things daily to connect with God.